Hello and welcome to the Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my co-host and partner, the Wild Ute. How you doing today, Ute?
I'm doing good. Happy Monday, y'all. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday is right. We've got there's a little bit of news to report, but honestly, we're all waiting with bated breath for this fictitious, maybe insurmountable meeting tomorrow at the ACC. Who knows what happens with that? But we are hearing so many different things. It's kind of a goofy report, so we'll talk about it. But who knows what actually ends up happening? Later in the show, we're going to have Kyle Brennan is going to come on, who represents the Crimson Collective, which is a University of Utah NIL. We'll bring him in just a second. Let's get some business done before we get started. First of all, thanks for being here. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Leave us a comment or a suggestion. Definitely follow us and follow us on Twitter, and also turn on your notifications for YouTube. We've had a lot of reports, hey, I don't know when your show's on. Well, that's because people aren't turning on their notifications. So that's an easy way to make that happen, and we're really excited for you to be here today. On top of that, we want to make sure that everybody knows you can leave comments in the comment section, the running section that we use for the show on YouTube. And then if you want to make sure that your comment is read, you can either become a member, and I've pretty much tried to always read the member comments that are applicable when we have a show, or outside of that, you can give us a super chat, and those we always read. So before we bring Kyle in here, what do you want to talk about today? What is the biggest thing in your eye?
Question: is that a KU logo in the back?
Yes, thank you very much.
Man.
I appreciate you. I was going to get to it later, but we might as well do it now.
I'm excited.
So I got a KU and a Kansas State flag. I got this pennant from Summit Hawk. Summit Hawk is also the guy who sent me the KU helmet.
Yeah.
So he sent me this Kansas and Kansas State, I guess we'll just call it a pennant, and I wanted to make sure that everybody saw it, and then I'm putting them up. I don't have a ton of room behind me, so when I do these bigger type displays, I'll do as much as I can. This one I'm just going to leave up the whole show, and I really appreciate Summit Hawk sending that in. I received it yesterday, and it's like getting Christmas in August. All right.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to some people here. So Nathan Campbell, first one in. We got Conundrum. Glenn's in the house from the Philippines. What's going on? We got Immaculate, S. Reed. We've got a full show, y'all. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to bring Kyle Brennan in, who's the CEO of the Crimson Collective. We're actually going to have a conversation about really what's the purpose of a collective. We're going to ask him some questions on like the A through Z's and how those work. So the first part of the show is really going to be understanding collectives and the importance of collectives. We're going to move on and talk about the University of Utah quarterback situation, because right now there's some injuries actually in the quarterback room. And then we're going to go and last and talk about Stanford, really where Stanford's going to go and the decisions they've got to make along with Cal and Oregon State and Wazoo. So we got a full show today for you. And I think it's a perfect time to bring Kyle Brennan.
You bet. I'll bring Kyle in, and then Kyle, before you get started, I want to make sure everybody knows that in the background, when we are all minimized, you can see two QR codes that's in the background on our show. The one on the left is for BYU's Could Connect, and the one on the right is for the Crimson Collective, which is who Kyle represents here. So Kyle, nice to meet you, first of all. I'm sorry I missed our lunch. That was a busy day for me. But kind of tell us who you are, why you're trying to get the word out on Crimson Collective, and kind of what's going on at Utah today.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, and I'm so excited to be on your show. I watched a couple of your episodes. I think you guys do a great job, really informative for our fans and our donors, everyone who kind of supports Utah athletics. So you guys are doing a great job, even though half the show is BYU. We won't hold that against you. But just a side note, I obviously want Utah to win every time, but having Kalani be the head coach at BYU has really changed the tenor of this rivalry, I think, in a good way. And he's brought some level-headedness to it, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how it looks going forward when we both are in the Big 12 together. It won't just be for pride; it could be for bowl games or bigger prizes on the line. So it's going to be exciting to have that last game of the year. Really could have a big stake in the conference standing. So really looking forward to being back with BYU again. So question, why am I working with this collective? So, when this position came open, Kyle Whittingham called and said, or I called Kyle and I said, hey, would you have a spot for me? He's like, absolutely. But this is a big job. And so started looking into it, and it is quite a bit of work. We have so much ground to cover in so short amount of time. But essentially, what we're trying to do is bring awareness to charities through our collective. So our student athletes work at charities for their pay, and bring notoriety to those charities by putting that information up on social media. And then we're able to pay the student athletes for the time that they spend doing that. So we're using that 501c3 model. And I'm not sure if Coup Connect is or not, or whatever they're doing, but that we're doing a 501c3 so our donors' gifts are tax deductible.
Yeah, Coup Connect decided to go the other way. They're not trying to do anything with the tax deductibleness of it. They had some concerns that, maybe in the future, their tax expert told them probably to avoid it. But It is interesting that you bring that up. Tell everybody what the difference is. Yeah,
so if you're a for-profit entity, you're doing much more of trying to find student athletes direct deals. So whether you're advertising for RC Willie or Thirst or just something like that in town, Coup Connect can definitely help businesses connect with student athletes. And that's more of the traditional sense of name, image, and likeness. If they're not going to direct business to business advertising, Coup Connect can still take a donation to give to a student athlete. But in doing so, it's not tax deductible for the donor. So that's the key difference for us. We wanted to have a scenario where it was more than just pay for play. And, it's very important for us to win, and we get that's the top priority. But at the same time, we want our student athletes getting better from this experience and gaining something out of it. And so when we hire them to do basically community service, they really come out of it with something. One, they build their resume for the future, which I think is really important for them. Two, they understand the importance of giving back. I think all the guys who go and work at charity and come back, they just come back in a great mood, feeling great about what they've done and feeling really connected. And so I think it's important for us to have, that aspect of it. And then they're also at these charitable events working, and you meet people and you broaden your own horizons and your own resume and your own connections. And so for us, even if the 501c3 thing were to go away, like, the Coup Connect probably is predicting that, maybe not why they didn't get involved in a 501c3, we would still keep that model, because for us, it's more important to think about the entire student athlete than it is just to get them cash. And so I'm pretty proud of the way that we're doing things and setting it up in a way where charities benefit, our community benefits, as well as our student athletes.
Yeah. So Kyle, I think this is a really good opportunity to kind of educate folks on how collectives really work, right? And what you guys do every day. I know there's some confusion even on my part about like really the A through Z's of a collective, really what the main purpose is behind the collective too. You kind of spoke a little bit about that, but really what's the purpose? Like, what are you guys trying to do every day?
Yeah. So every day we're just trying to get revenue in the door. I mean, that's the top priority, is just to try and get as much as we can in. We try and partner with great charities, ones that people recognize, ones that people feel good about, public charities that you've heard of, like Children's Hospital, things like that. And so for us, we're trying to get that revenue in. Sure. And then when we get it in, we're assigning student athletes to go out and do a certain amount of work. So there's a whole process of putting a contract together for a student athlete, telling them how much they have to do every month, and what some of the stipulations are around behavior and other things like that. And then we get the student athlete out there promoting the charity. And so it's just a repetitive cycle. We keep doing it over and over again. Find a donor, plug them into the collective, have the student athlete go out and do a charitable work and get them paid. So it's not that complicated. It really is pretty much that simple. That's on the nonprofit side.
Sure.
We also are going to have a for-profit arm that we're going to be opening this week. So what we're going to do in that space is have one of our staff members just reaching out to businesses day in, day out, trying to find partnerships that make sense for the student athlete with their interests and the company's interests. So, for example, we had one student athlete come to me and say, hey, I really want to get some hunting gear. Hunting's a big thing for me. And we said, hey, well, let's get you involved with something like Cabela's, where you're out promoting something for them and they'll give you some hunting gear. So it's from goods and services all the way up to cash. And and kind of what you make depends on who you are. I mean, we all know that's true. Like Cam Rising has some independent deals that he's been able to work that are significant, right? And so based on kind of the student athletes' reach over social media and their popularity, that helps determine what they get paid, especially in the open market.
It sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it kind of sounds like you guys are almost like a staffing entity, like a staffing contractor.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost like an ad agency or a marketing agency. Either we're going to help you with ads or we're going to help you with marketing when it comes to that front. So I'm really excited for that portion of the business to get going because there's a lot of money to be had in corporate dollars. It's a lot easier to spend your company's money than it is your own personal money, right? We all understand that. And so these companies have bigger marketing budgets and the ability to really dig in. And so that's a big part of where we're looking to expand next.
The reach of NILs is just booming. Everybody's going to be having them.
Right.
Every school has success and failure based on kind of what their donor group is, and there's that constant stress between, does the money go to the school or does the money need to be donated to the NIL? How do you guys merchandise that? How do you guys sell that to especially the big donors?
Yeah, that's a real challenge, and it's real. It's everybody's kind of asking the same people for money, and
right.
And you've got in athletics at Utah, you got the Crimson Club. First of all, and then you've got university that's out asking for money. Then you got Champions Alliance that they just put together. Then you've got 3 collectives in Utah athletics asking for money. So one of the challenges I'm trying to work through right now is coordinating with the other collectives to make sure that we're not just hitting the same person the same week, and it makes us all look like we don't know what we're doing, even though we're separate entities.
Right.
And so it's really important, I think, to have that collaboration there. I can say from the Utah athletics perspective with the Crimson Club, they've been a joy to work with. I think having worked there really helps me because I know them, I have a relationship, and there's some trust there. But, at the end of the day, they're trying to raise money for scholarships and facilities, and we're trying to raise money for NIL.
Right.
We need to raise money for all of it. So to say that one needs to take a back seat, we can't really do, because in this day and age, if you don't have NIL, you're not going to win. And, if you can't build the facilities that you need, like, they're trying to build a baseball stadium right now. If you can't build that, you're not going to have success. So it's all important. But it's important, I think, to talk to the donors about kind of the different lanes that we have and why each one of them is important.
So Kyle, in today's athletics, how important is it to have a strong NIL presence at a university for competitive reasons?
Oh, for competitive reasons, Kyle Whittingham, when he comes to talk to our potential donors, he says there's 3 really important things in Utah football: NIL, NIL, and NIL.
Yeah.
That's priority. That's priority 1, 2, and 3. And, this is the hard part for our fans, right? I think at first blush, you see pay for play, and, Utah has always done things or tried to do things the right way with good kids. And to start all of a sudden paying him when we weren't allowed to for years doesn't compute for a lot of folks. And so there's a challenge to kind of overcome that and to educate, because, at the end of the day, we're still going to need people's support. And so getting in front of them and talking about these things. And I think one of the key things for us too is really explaining to donors the impact that this has on the student athlete's life. So $20,000 to a donor is something they can part with, but $20,000 to a student athlete can really change their existence. We have so many student athletes before NIL came out that were sending portions of their scholarship check home to try and help family and friends, back home. And now they have the ability to really help. And so for a lot of our students, this is a godsend for them and their family to make meet those bills or get that extra need kind of thing. And so really am proud of that part of NIL and think it goes overlooked. I think a lot of us are always thinking about, that guy who, the Alabama guy who's going to make $5 million this year and look at that and don't, and that seems wrong. But the majority of the kids getting NIL deals are not getting those amounts. And the amounts that they're getting are truly making a difference in their life and their families.
This is a really, really basic question. I think it's actually a good question. Can you delineate the difference between NIL and a collective? Because I think it's confusing for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
You're kind of used interchangeably.
Yeah. All that NIL is it's the ability for student athletes to earn money off their name, image, and likeness. Okay. There's two ways to get that done. One is through direct advertising, right? So you work with RC Willey and you promote their furniture store and you get paid. That's one form of NIL. The collective does facilitate that, but the collective's main goal is to go to donors and get donations to go into our 501c3.
Okay.
So the donor gets a tax break. The student athlete is, instead of working for a company like RC Willey, we're simply employing them at a charity. Go out to Sammy's Buddies or March of Dimes this week, interact with the kids, take some pictures, help do whatever they need doing out there, and then post it on your social media page. That way the charity gets some benefit. The student athlete's growing from it. And this piece I forgot to mention, a portion of every gift does go to that charity as well. So we're also helping those charities out financially. It's not a huge chunk. The majority is still going to our student athletes, but we're definitely sending money to these charities as well.
One of the biggest challenges I think both BYU and Utah have, and collectively, I'll put that in quotes since the word's being used here, but the biggest challenge is the culture that we live in. We already live in a very giving culture in the state of Utah. A lot of people donate to religious organizations. A lot of people donate to other, little nonprofit things. And people think like they're being asked double and triple dip. And I think one thing that people need to understand is churches and whatnot do not donate straight to schools. They don't donate to a football program.
Right.
So it is a second request, but it has nothing to do with, it's all temporal, has nothing to do with some of those other things that people are concerned about. I'm constantly harping on BYU fans. Look, I know you pay your tithing, but BYU needs the money too. And to compete at these big high levels, if you guys have been for 12 years, this is your 13th year, it really costs a lot of money. And pay to play it sounds like it's a nasty term, but it's actually what it is.
Yeah.
You look at the reason Georgia's as good as it is because they probably got $2 and $3 and $4 million a month endowments. They go to NIL. BYU and Utah don't have access to that kind of money.
Correct.
So that's why the collective is so important, is because we need to engender this giving into every fan of BYU and Utah, and sort of turning the page and making people understand that is something that's okay to do and you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
I think it's still going to take a little while to figure out.
It does. It's going to take some time. And you said quite a few things in there that are important. First off, we definitely recognize that a lot of our fans are donating 10% off the top, right? We all know that. And, but, even that's the case, Utah is still one of the most charitable states in the country.
Right.
People here are so generous. They do give their 10%, but that doesn't mean they stop. And that's what makes this place special. But at the same time, you're right. There's donor fatigue that can come, right? You keep getting asked by different groups, but basically the same kind of group over and over and over again. It gets a little fatiguing. But at the end of the day, this is too big to fail, guys, at BYU and at Utah. If we don't come through on this endeavor, or we might be left out later on. We just saw the latest round of conference realignment, and we all know it's not over, right? BYU, Utah, and the Big 12, that's great. It's a great place to be. We're proud of it. Great place to land, but you always got to keep your eye on the horizon. And in my opinion, we're probably going to get to 2 leagues eventually and have a north, south, east, west kind of scenario, maybe not even under the NCAA. And I don't think that's very far off, guys. And in order to be, when you're playing musical chairs and to have a seat when the music stops in football, you've got to have a great NIL program. Otherwise, you're not going to be competing and winning. So it takes a while to get that through our fans' minds to really understand it. I think part of the issue we have, too, is a lot of fans think, well, Spence Eccles at Utah, he'll take care of it kind of thing. And that's just not the case. We need broad-based support from our top donors all the way down to the person who's donating, $20 a month. They're all important. And so we want to grow that broad-based membership that you talked about for those $20, $50 gifts all the way up to that, really special high-level gift. And so if you don't get on it, you're going to be left behind. And that's just the bottom line. And I think BYU's probably got a lot of momentum and energy right now going into the Big 12, right? And so right now, giving to the collective, people might be really excited for that. Whereas at Utah, there was a lot of angst in the last couple of weeks. Are we going to be in a conference? What's happening in the Pac-12? So people are just trying to reset their mindset that we're going to the Big 12, and it's not a great place to be. It's just it's taking them a minute to kind of process all that, in my opinion. So we've got some work to do on that front.
Yeah, I've got a question here, Kyle. So it seems like to me that there's some negative stigma with collectives and NIL out there.
Sure.
And I was going to see if you wanted to speak to that. Like, why do you think that is?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, you hear stories of kind of the exorbitant amounts that people get, and I think that sends a little taint over things. And then the other thing is, I think that some collectives aren't doing it the right way. There are collectives out there that say they're a 501c3, but they're really not following necessarily IRS rules, or it just seems like a vehicle for the cheating for cheating like they used to do, almost kind of thing. And so what I'm so proud of with Utah is we wanted to do this in what we call the Utah way, which is doing it the right way. This has got to be something our fans are proud of. This is something that's got to bring, a positive, put the university in a positive light, not a negative one. And so kind of have to overcome some of those messages that have been out there in the media. But at the end of the day, our fans need to know that the money they give is going to the student athletes. It's not being swallowed up by the collective and paying all of us a bunch of money. 97% of our gifts get to the student athlete. And so I think that's really important for people to know that, hey, this isn't a moneymaker where, you got a bunch of administrators sitting around counting their cash. This is 2 or 3 of us hustling every single day to try and get every dollar we can to our student athletes.
For sure.
I think it's pretty fair to say that in the next 3 years, the next negotiation is 2026 for the playoff. And where that goes, whether it's 12 teams or it goes to 16 teams, I think both BYU and Utah have aspirations to be in that final group at each and every year. Yep. So we only got a few minutes left here. If I give you just like 3 or 4 minutes, what's your major pitch to get people energized? Because I'm going to steal some of it, I think, because I want to be doing it for the BYU side as well.
Yeah. Well, my elevator pitch is, hey, look, first of all, we got to win ball games. And, when we get Kyle Whittingham to come in, he talks about it very intensely. Like, I can't even do it the way he does. So my elevator pitch won't be like his, but he comes in with that hammer, and it's, items 1, 2, and 3 is what we need to be successful. And so first and foremost, that's what we got to do. And that's why we're here, to help University of Utah football program win. But secondly, like the things I've talked about before, it's so important for us to help these kids grow into great young men. And being involved in charity and doing community service helps them. It helps build their resume. It helps them build character. And it also gets them connected and having a network that they may not have had before. And on top of it, we're able to help charities. I mean, Utah is, like you talked about, a state that cares about charity, that gives a lot. And so we've had some really cool partnerships with these charities that have allowed for us to really promote them, to give them some money, and the connection has been amazing. And so there's really no downside. There's no lose. It's charities win, student athletes win, and Utah football wins. And that's what matters at the end of the day. We cover all those 3 things through our collective, and really proud of that fact. Like I mentioned earlier, should 501c3 ever go away, we're going to still have our kids doing community service, because the community wins and the student athlete wins. And for us, that's important.
Very nice. Hey, Sal, coming over. I'd like to get your thoughts on the Gator Utes game here coming up.
Yeah, I can't wait.
What's your thoughts? Give us like a little summary of how you see this game going.
Yeah. So you guys know more about it than I do. I've been out of Utah for the last 3 years, so my knowledge of the team is not what it used to be. But I can tell you this much. Going down there last year and should have had the win at Florida gives me so much confidence coming into playing that game at home. We all know that Cam may not be available for that game. That does throw a monkey wrench into it a little bit, but I still think we're the kind of team that's going to line up with Florida and run the ball like we always do and play great defense. And so even if we have a quarterback, who's not as experienced coming in, he can manage that game under this offensive coordinator who's doing a great job, and make sure that we can be competitive and win a game like that without a guy like Cam. Now, over a whole season, that's different, but I think game 1, we're going to get them at home because we're tough. Our fans are going to be excited. They're going to be playing out here out west. That's a disadvantage for them this time. We had to go all the way there. And so I think we'll be ready for those guys. And I just can't wait to see, I think, a really improved defense this year. I know that last year it may not have been our usual typical lights out, stopping the run, stuff like that. But from what I understand, we're ready to go this year on that front. So really am excited for that Florida game. And guys, I don't know about you, but this is the longest month of the year. It's like waiting for Christmas when I was a kid, and every day is like agony. And so what are we, 10 days out, I think, right now?
It's very close, yeah.
Yeah, and so
next Thursday,
yeah, it can't get here soon enough. So I'm just excited to watch that game. And then what's so great is Utah has a great schedule. You know, when I was with the program, I helped put this schedule together, and so to have 2 Power 5 opponents in the non-conference, you know, if we can win those 2, we are in really, really good shape, especially starting with like number 14 ranking, I think is where we're at, depending on which poll you look at. So the season is set up for a lot of success again, and we have an experienced quarterback and a lot of great people back. So I think this is could be a really exciting year.
If you're the one who put this difficult schedule together, yeah, Kyle?
Yeah.
It's a murderer's row, my friend.
It is murderer's row. It is.
You ask for competition, and when you get it, now all of a sudden you're saying, wait a second, what did we ask for? BYU's done that so many times where they scale up their pro. You know, that 2021 schedule the BYU played against basically all of the Pac-12 South and even a couple North schools was crazy, right? There's no reason you should normally do a schedule like that, but sometimes you're put in a position, all you can do is knock down who's put in front of you.
That's right.
So I guess that's the last thing is knowing what your schedule is. And I was going to make a snide comment about how tough this beginning 5 weeks is going to be for you guys. Where do you think you guys end up?
That's a great question. I think that as I look at the South, it's all going to come down to us, and I think USC at the end of the day. And you know, I like Kyle Whittingham's chances because I think he's 2-0 against the new coach out there in California. So, you know, we got that experience on our side. We got toughness, but I think it will come down to that game for us. I think our schedule is actually really difficult because we've got, like, you know, in the North, we get Oregon State, which, no offense to Oregon State, but usually you're thinking, okay, that's a game that's at least manageable, right? All of them are a fight, but it's manageable. Now it's like, man, those guys could win the conference too. So it's going to be a tough year, no doubt about it. But I still think we end up the season 10-2. I'd go with 10-2.
Wow. Okay. And if Cam doesn't play?
10-2.
Wow.
Well,
okay.
I'm assuming he doesn't play.
I don't know.
If he's coming back, let me say this. Let me say this real quick. I only mean that if he's coming back after like game 2 or 3. If he's not coming back, you know, something goes wrong, he's out for the year, that changes a lot. But if he comes back after a couple games, I still think we 10-2.
I would warn you about that Baylor game.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know that is a very difficult place to play in September.
That's because you guys went and lost there, isn't it?
And well, you're going to have your own chance there.
Hey, we got no problem. I've been to Baylor. It's half. It's not even half the stadium full. And I think when you guys were there, half the stadium was BYU.
When was that?
fans.
20 years ago? No. This is not the same Baylor.
When you guys were there, you had more BYU fans.
You can be all confident all you want. That's fine.
You had more
BYU
wait to
get
fans.
To Texas.
You had more BYU fans at that Baylor game than Baylor fans, and you still couldn't get it done.
That is absolutely untrue. That is so untrue.
No. Ask any BYU fan who was there. They'll say every stadium you go to, BYU thinks they outnumber the home crowd.
Oh, wow. Here we go now.
Yeah.
So now BYU outnumbers every stadium they go, they outnumber the fans. Is that what you're saying?
That's what your fans say. I don't know.
No.
They can't count.
Look, you're listening to Twitter fools. You're not talking to somebody who's actually watched football. Okay. So at the end of the day, you have fun with your little Florida sidebar game. But when you get to Baylor, especially without Cam Rising, you guys could get boat raced.
You know what's funny that you mentioned earlier? You said
you could lose by 20.
Listen, you said your BYU played murderer's row when you had to play the Pac-12 South and a couple Pac-12 North teams, and how crazy that was. We do that every year. You guys have got to.
How crazy it was? We went 6-1. So yeah, that was really a bad season.
No, that's great. You did a great job. But
look, you can only beat and play who's in front of you.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into the Utah BYU holy war crap because we're still a year away from that. So let's build up on that in the next year.
That's the opportunity
okay.
You've always been waiting for to shut everybody up that you belong.
Yes, so it is. Yeah, it is.
Well, it'll be fun to see.
It will be fun to see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
But you're not going to find any BYU guys that are saying they're not looking forward to it.
No, I'm looking forward to it because, like I said, when all kidding aside, when we started, I really, Kalani, A-Rod, a lot of those coaches down there I used to work with a lot. And like I said, I think it has made the rivalry better. And I'm always cheering for those guys to be successful, which, so it's made it great. And I, on all seriousness, wish BYU all the best of luck going in the Big 12.
Well, and I think this is where we can leave it, Kyle, because remember back in the day when it used to be you wanted Utah to beat everybody, you wanted BYU to beat everybody, so that last game of the season was going to tell the tale, right?
That's a great
That's
point.
what we asked for every year, and we're going to get it back.
That would be
no
great.
reason we couldn't do it again.
That'd be a ton of fun.
I think it will be fun, and I think it's coming.
I think the last one that we played on the last game of the year was a Max Hall game where he threw like 6 picks.
Yeah,
that we played in the last game for a long time. So you guys got a little motivation there.
A little. There's more than a little. All right. Anything else you want to say, Ute?
Go Utes.
That basically sums it up. Go Utes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming, Kyle. We really appreciate it. We'll do this again, okay?
All right. Appreciate you guys. Good luck.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
So, yeah, the Crimson Collective. You can see the QR code top right-hand side of the screen. We're going to be supporting the collectives because, as Kyle Whittingham said, collectives mean everything. It's the first, second, and third most important thing in recruiting and wins. So, y'all, it's just life.
So Pickles has got us dialed in. He says, week of the season feels appropriate. Bomber and Ute stop being friends now. Look, we're going to be friends. We're going to be friends, but we're definitely rivals, which is the name of the show.
There's no way you can we can't, we don't manufacture the tension. It's just natural because of.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right. Well, let's bring on some guys who maybe you don't have as much tension because we're not talking Notre Dame tonight. And that would be Immaculate and Moen. How are you guys doing tonight, guys?
Good, man. Good. That really kind of got the tone going perfectly right there.
If you're new to the rivalry, you're new to the Holy War, what you just saw in the last 10 minutes is actually what it's all about. And so it's just going to get better and better as this next year goes and Utah gets ready to enter the Big 12. Anyway,
it's everyday life out here in Utah. Everyday life.
Pretty much everywhere you go, it's the same. Anyway, let's talk some Cal and Stanford. Oh. So just to set the table where we're at, there's this supposed ACC meeting that's going to happen tomorrow. If they vote, if they don't vote, I think the whole thing's a shell game. But they're supposed to be coming in and deciding whether they're going to bring in Stanford. What happens with Cal, OSU, and Washington State, still nobody can promise. So what are you guys thinking about where we're at right now? Let's start with Stanford, and then we can move to Cal.
Yeah, go ahead, Mo. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, let's see what they're going to offer the 4 teams that are the no votes, because it's a give and take. Stanford ain't giving enough, so they're going to have to give those 4 teams an out, or promise them a significant amount of revenue gain, which they're probably not willing to do. So I think this is all for nothing. I don't think Stanford makes it in. I don't think SMU makes it in. I don't think Cal makes it in. The ACC's sticking at the number they're sticking at. Nobody's moving. This is just going to be one more chance for Notre Dame to make the pitch to try and benefit Notre Dame.
It's all coming back to Notre Dame.
Yeah. What's that, you?
It's all coming back to Notre Dame.
Always does.
Well, that's all it does.
That's all it does. All right, Immaculate.
Yeah. As far as them go, I pretty much agree with them in all this except for one very important part, and that's that they won't come to an agreement. I think they will. I think they have to. I think it's going to be an agreement that they don't want to make, and that's why it's gone to this point this far. You could probably assume from what I'm saying the type of agreement that I think they're going to end up making. I think it's going to require a set price to get out. That's what those schools need. They cannot do this in court. They cannot do this with litigation between parties. It'll take way too long. What they need is a set price. And I thought the information that just recently came out about 4 presidents and the AD of Notre Dame all having ties to either Stanford or Cal, it makes this even harder for them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be so pressured by Stanford and Cal people to make this deal, get us in this conference so that our schools do not get seriously injured. That doesn't help them. That hurts them because the other side now knows they have this going on behind the scenes and this pressure, so they can just sit there and wait. So I don't see anything making this vote change except for exactly what those schools want. And that's not just more money. They would have to be making up like $30 to $40 million a year. That's not coming from this. I think that it has to come down to, a very big agreement that most people probably think is impossible. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's from the ACC side. I mean, look at Stanford and Cal, though. I mean, really, does it make sense for them? Like, really, does it make sense for them? Because they're going to come in with such a revenue deficit. Like Cal Berkeley already is having trouble in their athletic department finances. You're talking about getting little to no revenue. I mean, even if they got a small cut, it's not going to offset the travel expenses. Like, I don't get how this makes sense for anybody involved, this cross-country travel stuff. Like, not even in basketball and football. It just is hard. Nothing makes sense. From the ACC side, it's not making sense like you guys are talking about. From the Stanford and Cal side, again, the finances and the travel just don't make a lot of sense. It just seems like it's way too difficult and convoluted. So I just don't see it really working out at the end of the day.
The best solution I've seen to that come forward is some kind of an idea with gonna have to look deep into the rules on this. If they could bring just football and basketball over and then put the rest of their Olympics in, say, the West Coast Conference or the Big West or one of those, as long as the competition is good enough for Stanford's Olympics over there, which I don't know. But a lot of the schools that are in that are the type of schools that they'd want to be around. People think that, some of them because of their religious background. I don't think that's a problem. We're talking about California religious schools. It's a little bit different. So I think that might be the best solution for them, is to put their Olympics in those conferences and then maybe just get football, or if they can do both football and basketball in the ACC, then to do that. And that's a lot more feasible in terms of cost.
Yeah, so you're traveling just occasionally with that cost.
With the money sports, right?
With the money.
So
right.
the only motivation, to answer your question, the only motivation is to stay relevant. That was the concern with the Pac-12 possibly breaking up, is the schools that didn't go to a conference would be irrelevant. And so that hanging out there is a big deal. Washington State and Oregon State are desperate to find a home, but they can't go anywhere until it's decided where Cal and Stanford go. If the ACC doesn't accept them, or if they put out acceptance criteria that Stanford and Cal aren't willing to take, then I firmly believe those four schools are going to have to do something probably local with some Mountain West schools, and hope that they can survive a year of football in 24, so that in 25, maybe they get pulled into a bigger conference at that point. But the larger thing with the ACC is, if they don't expand now, and this is what Immaculate's saying, if they don't expand now, will they survive? Does ACC have enough gumption to stay together if they don't expand? The Pac-12 didn't, and the Pac-12 blew up. So it's that do or die situation. The ACC's on the clock, and everybody knows that Clemson and Florida State want out. The only question is, are you going to make them break out, or are you going to give them a way to get out, but you get a lot of cash out for the option?
Okay, let's say that Florida State leaves in a year or two. Like, is that even a viable A4 conference? I mean, what's Florida State and Clemson balance? Like, aren't they basically in the Western American Conference anyway? Like,
I think that's why they blow up. That's my contention, is once they leave, that conference goes to pieces.
Well, I mean, look, once you have the money, once that figure is set, it's not two schools leaving the ACC.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
You're going to have, it's a lot of schools.
That's
so
right.
You're saying swap 7 schools for Stanford and Cal.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's going to happen.
You can't even sell a stadium with pack opponents, guys. Like, they can't even do that. Like, if Forest is coming to Cal, no one's going to go to those games. No one's going to care about those games. It's going to get worse out there.
Could do a little math for you. Big 10's at 18, SEC's at 16, Big 12 is at 16. If every one of those goes to 20, you're looking at needing 10 schools. If that's 10 all coming from the ACC, that's an easy threat to dissolve. They're not even going to get the full exit fee on this. You understand? Like, if they really are bound and determined to get out early, they probably don't want to dissolve, because that's just very harsh. I mean, that's going to be a lot of fallout from that. But if you leave them no choice, I think that they would do it. And if you can have 10 schools that all look to have a spot, that's not a hard one to get. And so I don't think that the ACC is going to get even the full 120 exit fee. But when you take whatever it is times 10, it's a hell of a number. Say it's 50 million or 100 million, and you take it times 10, you're at $1 billion. I mean, these are not small numbers for those other ACC schools to sit there on. Even if they get renegotiated down on their deal, they're still going to have this huge pot of cash to sit on. And if they got to pay for exit fees for some other schools to come in and join them, they can do that. They can do whatever they want with this. So while it's, may not be what they have now, it's kind of an illusion. It's not going to stay there. They can't sit there and think that they're going to keep that this whole time, because I think the votes are there for dissolution. So now's the time to make the deal when everyone's trying to get ready for 2026.
And the reason why you and I just look at this differently, the reason why I think it doesn't happen is because of the exact reason you just described. Money doesn't get you access. Money allows the programs to survive for a while, but you'd ask the most important question: is that league minus those schools still a power conference, still an A conference? And my contention would be, once those 10 leave to the other 3 conferences, what's left of the Pac-12 and what's left of the ACC is not a power conference. So you can have all the money in the world, but if you lose access,
I understand
to
that
the power conference piece, then that's okay. We're looking
right,
at it
and you're 100% correct. I'm not doubting anything there you just said. It just comes down to a perspective of, okay, if they're willing to dissolve, none of that matters, because you'll lose it all. You'll be sitting there with no conference, no home. You're in a worse position than the Pac is in. That's the reality of that.
But the
that's
10 schools that
position.
leave won't care, right? Because they're gone. They won't care what the
commission
is.
Maybe they worry about some litigation or some things that might come afterwards. But yeah, I mean, they're good.
Yeah,
they're set to go.
Let's move on to Cal. Let's talk about Cal. Okay, so let's assume Stanford gets an invite. Does Cal go with them? Because there's been that question out there.
Cal might not get an invite. To for travel partner reasons. No. I think that'd be the only reason that they would have to take at least one more West Coast school to give Stanford a travel partner out there. Stanford being all the way out, that's almost essentially just like Hawaii exists now, away from the entirety of every other conference, Just one single school out on the West Coast does not make sense. You've got to have Western travel partners.
Jeremy Callahan's got a comment here. ACC minus the Clemson and FSU is a weaker football conference than the Mountain West Conference, no question. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I disagree with that, but you're getting closer.
It's
not outlandish as it seems, actually.
Pac-12 Pilgrim, way to see you here, Larry. Thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, Larry.
He's one of our members, and you can become a member of the show. I didn't do this last show. I want to make sure everybody knows what that membership icon looks like. If you go to the Big 12 Mafia page, there's a join button right in the middle of the page. It's obnoxiously small to see, and I just wanted to point that out to everybody. It is, if I can get it, there we go. Let me take off this comment from Larry. There's this join button right here, and if you click the join button, it takes you to 3 tiers of membership, and each one of those has different things that you get with it. I'm going to place an order for towels. My rally towels is going to go out this week. As soon as I receive those, they're going to go to the founder members. So, we're going from here, guys. If you're a founder member, please DM me your address, because I'm going to have to send you a towel when I get those in. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're a founder member of the channel, please DM me your shipping address in Twitter, and I will get that out to you guys. All right, so let's go back to this comment from Larry. He says, Mo and Vision, I have heard Big Ten presidents not really wanting Clemson. Is that true or false?
If they were available, they'd take them in a minute. Doesn't matter. It's a brand. You're getting a Carolina team. You're not getting a North Carolina team, but you're getting a team in the Carolinas. which is important for you. Yeah, they would take Clemson in a minute if they were available. I don't think they'll be available. I think Clemson and Florida State do end up in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, that's where I thought they would be too. If you want your comment to be read, we have a ton of just regular comments today. So if you're not a member, it'll have to be a super chat to guarantee we read it. Otherwise, we'll just continue to cruise through these comments, and we'll pull out quite a few questions today, I think, and statements from you guys. Let's see here. Shooter TX says the ACC Gore makes it way too expensive to leave. Trying to dissolve won't work either. Too much legal fees, which is what Immaculate's been saying for weeks. The ACC will stay as they are for at least 7 more years. Who believes that? I don't.
I do not.
And he's right. I mean, there is going to be a lot of legal fees and a lot of billable hours involved with a situation like that. But when we're talking about, $40+ million a year difference, that pays for some good legal fees. There is reason to actually do that. And, I don't think anyone wants to do it. These are people, and they know what kind of damage that's going to do to the schools who do not have a spot afterwards. But, if they take their threats and their desires and just kind of blow it off like it's no big deal, they could be asking for a very bad situation.
That's a good question, Shooter. We really appreciate you asking it and having you be
I
here.
would just bring up that when Stanford and Cal don't make it into the ACC, you're going to see Notre Dame really start having to contemplate what they are doing, because they have a chance to get Stanford and Cal into the Big Ten just by joining. So if the ACC rejects them again and Notre Dame sees the writing on the wall, Notre Dame could bolt, and that could open up a whole can of worms for everybody else in the ACC. Because once Notre Dame leaves, it's believed there's a legal precedent that the other schools can use to leave. So, I mean, this is why those 4 want to hold tight and say, no matter what. They want to push Notre Dame to leave that conference. That gives them the cheapest and easiest option to get out of the ACC. So that's why I don't think it's going to last 7 years. I don't think it's going to last till 2026.
I agree with you. Ramon, so is there enough money there with Notre Dame coming over to the Big Ten to lift Cal and Stanford?
There's enough money. From what I understand in the escalator, it would immediately make Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, and Notre Dame full membership shares.
Holy smokes. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Notre Dame's already in the deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's already determined what Notre Dame brings to it. So Notre Dame could cover itself and 4 other members of the Big Ten.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, that's why everything's based around them. I mean,
it makes sense.
Opie D-Don, thanks for being here, Opie. We appreciate you watching. If it's $500 million for the Gore and $120 million for the exit, 60% of those numbers is $372 million. I'm guessing the 60% is based on the OU and Texas leave fees. So if that's the case, if it's 60% that they got out for, so I'm interested to see how those numbers, how close to those numbers it will be. Very interesting what happens. That I think right now that 60% threshold is kind of what the premise has been for a while.
Well, I would say like that's the number that we're talking about for Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They did not have the angle or the leverage of being able to dissolve the conference in order to get out.
Yeah.
So that changes the numbers. I mean, that's, I love math stuff like that coming out and people looking at it in that way. And it's very feasible. But I would probably say the threat to dissolve, if it's real, big if, cuts that price down to a point of this is better than us all of a sudden have no conference underneath us whatsoever. But interesting numbers.
Nathan Campbell says, Bomber, who are the other 3 schools that y'all are talking about cancels out of the ACC? So they're the same. No, none of them are a surprise. They're Clemson, Miami, Florida State, North Carolina. Let's see. Who else am I missing?
North Carolina
State, Virginia Tech, and potentially
Miami.
Louisville. Yeah, I said Miami. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Louisville.
Yeah.
And then the Big 4 you just mentioned, though. The Big 4.
I think Pitt's part of it.
Pitt would try.
And then one more. It comes down to who the Big 12 likes the best. You like Syracuse, you like Wake Forest. Like, what do you like? But yeah, 10 spots.
Sorry, you did that, Ute. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hey, Opie, thank you so much for the generosity. I love it. There we go, Bomber. Yeah. All right. Opie says, I think these universities' backroom deals know where they can go. With some having multiple choices, to me, the real question is what will ESPN's pound of flesh be to make them whole? Yes, 60% for the whole.
Well, I mean, just from what we were saying earlier, if 8 of 10 schools go to Big 12 and the SEC, how damaged is the ESPN really when they're probably getting better ratings for all of those teams than they were getting in the ACC?
I think they go to the SEC. So what ESPN takes, they kind of are taken from themselves in the ACC contract. They're just paying more for the same product. So I don't know how that calculates. If they go to the Big Ten, that's a different calculation because the ESPN is going to try to get everything they can for them or out of them if they're going to go to the Big Ten. So it really depends where their destination is.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, Bomber. It seems like the SEC is a good fit with the ESPN contract and stuff. It seems like it's going to maneuver that way financially for sure.
It would definitely grease the skids, right? It would, provide the impetus to sort of go over. They do need money for the rest of the conference. They would get something, but I don't think it's going to be near what it would normally be. Hey, Thank you very much, Super Chat, Opie.
Let's give a shout out to the community. We've got 122 people in the house right now. Seriously, guys, thanks for coming out and representing. So keep those questions coming, and we'll answer them. But let's go back and talk a little bit more about this Cal situation. Okay?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
We talked about Stanford for a second, but Cal is a really interesting story because they don't have the finances that Stanford has. They don't have the endowment, and then their athletic department is broke already, guys. They're already broke. So really, what do they do?
Let's see if I can bring up Let me see if I can bring that picture up. Hang on one second.
Sure. Yeah. So what does Cal do? What's the play here? Do they go along with Stanford and take low payout? Can they afford to do that? Where are they going to get the funds for their athletic department? Now you can kind of see here. This is the Sportico information, and this is for Cal Berkeley. So this is kind of just laying out what they reported financially from their athletic department back in from 21 to 2022. And you can see the left-hand bar graph, their football revenues. Their football revenues, they had in 21 to 22, and that fiscal year end, they recorded about $44 million. And a good chunk of that was media rights, almost 20 million of that, and also conference distribution. So you're seeing that Cal's currently essentially broke, and they've been recording, at least in this examination period, about 27 million approximately, and in media related money. So the question is, if they're already broke, really, where are they going to get the money to do this traveling? And I don't know. I don't know where they get that from. Are they going to get it from UCLA with the calimony tax from the UCLA going to the Big Ten? I've got to think that, the Cal Board of Regents and a lot of folks in California are really pissed off about this move because UCLA has really screwed Cal, guys. It gets more evident every day, but this is breaking out the finances and how desperate Cal is right now. UCLA leaving Cal, it really, really is breaking the back of Cal Berkeley because I'm not sure they can afford just the travel if they don't get a lot of media distribution to go over to the ACC. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
That direct institutional support, is that just straight subsidy from the school
university
itself? And then basically from the state of California?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what goes into that number, but basically that's outside support, not really that the athletic department's generating. So it's just lift the athletic.
That is painful.
Yeah, it doesn't break it down, so we can't tell exactly what that means.
Okay.
It's just a lump sum.
I know, there's other ones like we've seen with UConn where they have this institutional subsidy, and a lot of that money then comes from the state through the school then to the athletic department. I'm kind of wondering if that's maybe the same thing.
It could be. Really, this is just the illustration to get real practical about it. This is what the financials say. This is the historical real financials, and now we're talking about them going cross-country travel, in football and basketball for for maybe no pay or little pay. I don't know how Berkeley can afford it, honestly, guys.
Don't they owe $140 million still on their stadium?
That sounds right. I don't know the exact figure, Bomber, but I think that they're in debt.
So they're already behind, but stadium figures don't have to come out of operating budget, right? Those can come from, and donations, and there's other ways that they can pay that back, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, like, Stanford can maybe like lift, we can take a look at Stanford's financials. We have to go to the EADA side. It's not going to break it out like this. It's not going to be as clean. But really, the idea that everyone's talking about is Stanford's just going to use their endowment funds to fund their athletic department. That's not how it works. I mean, their endowment's huge, but it's not used to fund the football program and pay coaches and everything else. So I don't know. Maybe
Stanford's not listed.
Yeah, Stanford's a private school, so these are all public schools.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
No worries. Okay, well, let's pop off of that.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about that? I mean, do you think Cal can afford to go to the ACC?
Well, they've got to go somewhere, but I thought it was interesting that you said that UCLA screwed Cal. Well, when the story comes out of how the Big 12 poached the Pac-12, Cal plays a really interesting part in it. So that is going to be something that everybody's really going to enjoy on that 30 for 30. Cal's fiscal situation is a direct result of Cal's mismanagement of their athletics department.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. The fact that they tried to strong arm UCLA and the Big Ten is probably the one thing that hurt them more than anything else right now. The Big Ten is holding firm. They're not going to add them. The only way the Big Ten's adding Stanford and Cal at this point is if Notre Dame joins. Right. So Cal's lack of relevancy falls on Cal. They made poor decisions throughout the athletic budget, poor decisions in their football. I mean, even you have Marshawn Lynch and Aaron Rodgers as alumni, and you don't use those guys. I mean, how can you not use those guys to go out there and sign athletes? You're more concerned about students. So, I mean, Cal has nobody to blame but Cal. Cal has nobody they can go to. Cal has to wait for Stanford to bring him along as a kid brother. That's it. And I still don't see that happening. At that point, you're going to see more pressure exerted on Notre Dame or a reformatted Pac-12 conglomeration, but they probably won't play football in 2024. I think you'll see those four schools take 2024 off, and the new Pac-12 will be about in 2025.
Moan, do you see Cal bleeding UCLA out in media distributions because of this calimony? The
calimony is a set rate. It's a set rate. So, I mean, it's going to hurt UCLA, but UCLA is still going to be doing far better than they would right now if they hadn't got into the Big Ten. So,
yeah, I think Cal is like at most 10 million. So even with that, UCLA is actually still making more than Oregon and Washington are.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
It'll all equal out in the end, and they'll maybe make it a little bit less, but they'll just be making so much more than they were in the Pac.
Jeff Fuller's in the house. Good to see you, Jeff. Thanks for joining the show. He says actually Stanford has about $1 billion endowment just for athletics. That's part of why their revenues are so high. They may a ton of interest most years from market gains. So they have money.
They can make money, good investments over in the Stanford world. So Stanford, I guess the ACC is an easier play. You can totally see it happen. They've got the finances to do it. Cal's in a different world. Wazoo, Oregon State too.
As long as that market doesn't crash.
It all comes down to access and being treated like you're one of the big kids. So again, if Stanford gets in, that's purely going to be for appearances. But I still don't think.
I think Stanford is actually probably part of the Cal solution. I think having them nearby, having that local in there, I think will be worth some money to Stanford, and they'll probably help make that solvable. So that even if this is just like football and basketball, they'll make it so that California can be part of it too.
Daniel Gayak says, good to have you here, Daniel, by the way. I'm trying to find the article, but Cal Berkeley has $440 million in infrastructure debt.
Yeah, Moan's right. I mean, Cal has been
That's
horrible with the finances. Like
insane.
they're to blame for this. Like there's nobody else to blame but them. They've been horrible at hiring coaches. They've mismanaged plenty. I mean, it's on them. But the question is, now that they're in this pickle, what do they do now? And what can they
Right.
afford to do? And probably go to the Mountain West, guys. So I see it.
Internally, they've looked down at sports so much there that this has to be a real kind of coming to reality moment for them. Even for them, they have to look at sports as if it matters, and I don't think that they're liking that too much right now.
So let's put it on the table. Do you guys think they have a vote, which they still have never had a vote? They've all been straw polls. Is there a chance the ACC actually does a vote tomorrow? And nobody said that it has to be settled tomorrow, but the vote would basically be, yeah, we're going to pursue this, or no, we're not going to look into this any further. Let's just go around the table. What do you think, you?
I don't think that it's going to happen. So if there's the vote tomorrow, I don't think there's going to be enough support to move the needle on this thing. So I don't see Stanford nor Cal nor anybody going to the ACC.
What do you think, Immaculate? I guess.
I would say I don't think that there's going to be a vote. I don't think that they're at that point. They're not. I mean, they're almost up against the wall, but not quite. I mean, all of this that I've been saying, these are huge decisions. If they do have a vote and it's a no vote, that's it. It's the final type of vote. They've been holding off of doing that, and they're basically just saying we can't come to an agreement on this. So I don't think we're going to actually have a vote, but I do think what we're going to have are leaks. I think we're going to have some big leaks coming out tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah.
Moen?
Yeah, you're not going to have a vote because you only have a vote if you know you have the votes.
Right.
And I don't think they're going to have the votes. I think what you're going to get tomorrow is a pitch. You're probably going to have every AD and president pitching why Stanford and Cal make sense for the ACC. And you're going to have North Carolina State, Clemson, and Florida State going, so what?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do a straw poll, and they won't have it. And if somebody does flip, you can bet Miami or Virginia Tech flips their vote to no.
Hey,
I would actually be concerned about having more no votes come out after this than before.
Just curious, I want to ask you guys a question on that. Do you think that there's a chance that if they do the straw poll, that they actually come back with more than 4 no's, that we maybe get 8 no's, and that's the signal?
It is. It's
I
like,
think
shut
that
up,
is.
quit
Yeah.
coming to us
Like,
anymore.
we got the numbers now. You know,
I think Miami flips to, and you get 5 no's.
yeah, that's the political plays. If you're down to it, you show your hand now, and you show your eight or more votes.
Well, and you want to tell these guys, quit calling these meetings. I don't want to keep coming to these meetings when all we're going to talk about is what we're not going to talk about.
Yeah,
let's just
football
end
season
it.
start next week.
We want to watch. We want to watch football
We
next
got to
week.
get on with this. It's time.
This is so stupid. We're still talking about this. I vote no. I vote no. I vote no, and the whole thing is done. I just think Cal and Stanford are screwed, and the only people they have to blame are themselves. So now let's talk about schools that we really wish had an opportunity, but are now orphans, and that would be Oregon State and Washington State. Do they build their own little power conference with them at the top, and who cares what happens with Stanford and Cal, and they get aggressive and actually try to throw something together before the beginning of the season?
I think it makes sense, like this merger idea between the Mountain West and the Pac. It makes a lot of sense, and like they assume the name of the Pac, whatever, right? Pac 15, 16. Just for the brand name, but I think that Oregon State and Wazoo, that's really their best play, their best option. Looking maybe at the American, I don't think it makes as much sense travel-wise, and it's not much more distribution money that would offset that. So I think Mountain West is an easy kind of natural fit. I see them ending up in the Mountain West, and if Stanford and Cal don't end up in the ACC, they're probably going to be ending up there too, unless they want to go independent, guys. And maybe Stanford considers that, but I don't think Cal Berkeley would. So Cal is probably going to be, in that same predicament. Maybe Stanford in merging with the Mountain West.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that there will not be any type of merging into the Pac. There's no television rights deal. Yep. You'd have to get that done in a very short amount of time. There's all the exit fees for having to get in schools within a year. which is an incredible amount, especially if we're talking Mountain West schools. I think, you just merge it into the Mountain West as the easiest choice. If they want to do a little more of a long-term type of situation, maybe talk to the AAC and bring some Mountain West schools with you so that you have kind of a division in the West of the AAC. But short-term wise, if you're still looking to get up into maybe the Big 12 later, especially if you're Oregon State, you join the Mountain West, you win it, and you get into the national tournament, and you're on the big stage. I think at that point in time, everyone has to say, these guys are at least worth $25 million to the Big 12, right? Because, I mean, look how much they're bringing in with just the credits for getting in that far. So, and that's not like a foolproof plan, but I think that's where I'd go if I was them. I'd just take your lumps, go to the Mountain West, win it, and go to the tournament.
Moen?
I agree. I think pending the fact if Notre Dame wants to continue to Notre Dame, Stanford would go independent. Cal, Oregon State, Washington State would join the Mountain West. And they'd be competitive there. They'd be really competitive there.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's better to be a big fish in a small pond.
This is the question and we've only been talking, and I'm not saying us four, I'm talking out in realignment land. Everybody's been talking about what happens to the rest of the Pac-12 assets. Is there not a legal maneuver where to eliminate all the exit fees, if they took every school from the Mountain West and brought it with them to the Pac-12, they would keep everything that the Pac-12 has and all of its ownership stake, its war chest and all that, and they could just basically write off or X out via vote all of the leave fees so that they could keep, like you said, keep the Pac whatever name and then keep all the assets.
Yeah,
there's got to be a way to do that, right?
Does Stanford and Cal leave so that those no votes are gone? Because I don't know if Stanford and Cal are really voting to do that. But, yeah, I mean, I guess if you took the entire conference, well, then there's no one to receive exit fees. So, yeah, you basically do away with that.
Yeah, I got to think there's a way to do that. Now, whether, like you said, whether Stanford would vote against its own interest, I have no idea about that.
The same situation still applies, though. If you're moving into the Pac-12 as a conference entity, you don't have a TV rights deal, and you're sitting there with less than a year in a very weak negotiating position. Like, it kind of seems like you're going to get bent over a little bit there. Yeah. If I would still go into the Mountain West and try to renegotiate that deal. At least you have something in place. You have some visibility. Visibility is going to be key, especially when it comes to getting the rankings in order to get into the playoff. Especially if you want to try to get 2 in there. But well, think about it. Think about it.
Could
if Oregon
you imagine?
State,
I can't imagine.
Think about it though. If Oregon State wins, they goes right through there, and Washington State goes through it with 1 loss.
Nah, I don't.
1 loss.
So. They're just like any other G5 conference. I think you only get 1 in.
Yeah, but they got the name Washington State, and they have 1 loss, and you're looking at schools that are coming out of the other conferences with maybe 3 losses.
Look, I love Washington State.
I'm not like saying this is happening. I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't think so.
As a possibility that
Oregon to be honest, Boise may win that every year. Boise might dominate that conference.
Yeah,
so
what kind of story would that be? What kind of story would that be if Oregon State gets in, and Washington State goes 11-1, and also gets in as like number 12 in the nation?
A miracle, I think, is what you would call that.
What kind of story would be if Cal entered in and they were like the dogs of the new Mountain West Conference?
Right.
Have 2 guys. You go the other way. Hey,
anything's possible.
Comment here. Let's read this script.
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
Yeah, if we've learned only one thing about conference realignment, is that academics aren't really a factor. See the pine trees. Yep, we're you're guilty of academic, dialogue and stuff. And through this realignment phase, I've learned that money really matters much more than academics.
Right. Thanks for being here, Greg.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
A little bit of humble pie.
Yep.
Jeff Fuller says Bloomberg article in 2002 or 2003 ranked the top 30 largest athletics endowments. Only like 15 were over 25 million, and Stanford and Notre Dame were the top 2. There's no shocker there. No shocker there. Let's see. Our Webb, who's one of our members, good to have you here, our web. Thanks for being here tonight. He says there will never be a vote until they know they have the votes. Yep.
Right on.
I
We
agree
heard
with that unless they're ending it and they're saying this is over. We're not going to get this done. Then they'd have the vote because they know it'd be a no, but then that's it. Like,
Good point.
it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's.
I don't even think they have the vote. I don't think they would put Stanford and Cal through that. I think it would be a straw poll only.
Yeah, that's true. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We haven't done this little check down in a second. Please subscribe. Leave us a comment or suggestion. Turn on your notifications on YouTube bell underneath the video you're watching, and that will always let you know when our show is going to be coming up. We always give people hours and hours to know before we're on the air. And then leave your comment. We're trying to get through as many as we can. If you're a member, those are read first, and then super chats, we read all super chats. All right, go ahead, you.
Yep. So Shooter says academics do matter. They matter to the Pac-12. I mean, Pac-10, the Pac-9, the Pac-4. That basically sums it up. I mean, academics matter as long as the money's the same.
Well,
academics don't matter.
At least, well, in the Big Ten's expansion, 3 of the schools had good academics. So
right. Absolutely, that's true. Kyle Visser says these schools without a TV home should put their games on public TV and sell their own commercials. Maybe folks would start watching public television. Wow, that sounds like something I heard from Tony Altimore. I think just take all your own TV rights and sell them. I've heard that on a few shows where they say that's the most powerful play they could do is go out and go to the local Albertsons and down the street to the local car dealership and sell your own rights. If it was that easy, folks, everybody would do it.
Stanford owns their own cable company, so Stanford could probably do that.
Washington State and Cal and Oregon State cannot do that.
Yeah, Washington State, Cal, Oregon State. Yeah, there's a cable company, Cardinal Cable. It's in San Francisco. Yeah, they own it.
Let's see. Jim Choi says Cal doesn't care how much they owe, just like they took from UCLA. Cal will take it from the California taxpayers. Well, that's true too. Everything's free in California, I've been told. Let's see here. Our web again says I bet they stop the straw poll the minute they get 4 no votes. So it's a short vote, is what our web's saying. Okay, Florida State, Clemson, Miami. Okay, yeah, 4. We're done. Everybody can go get back.
Yeah, why bother getting more, right?
Why
the other 4 standing like, nope, we want to vote. We're telling you this time.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is just goofbally. Let's see here. Patrick Weigel. I hope that's how I'm saying that right. Patrick Weigel says the Church of the Holy Valley Girl. The Valley Girl, Holy Valley Girl. That's funny. Okay. Am I the only one that got that? You don't get that joke?
Oh, I got the reference. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Valley Girl with his.
You'd have to be a little older.
What was his daughter's name? Yeah. I forget his daughter's name.
I can't remember either.
Moon Unit. I think it was Moon Unit.
That's exactly right, actually.
Moon Unit.
This is shocking. I don't think our web's ever agreed with me on anything. So this is really, really cool right here. So. All right, here we go. I agree with Wild Dude about a Mountain West merger, except they really need to get some Central Time Zone schools to enhance the future media value. Otherwise, same time zone issues as the Pac. Yeah.
He's not wrong. It just depends if they're making a long-term play or a short-term play right now. If it's short-term, not necessarily. If it's long-term, you might be onto something.
We'll have to find out. I think time will tell. Cougar Tracks is in the house. Here I am, always late to the party. Body blue, raised arms. Is that a little picture you can find? That would be great. I would love to have that show up. Let's see here. Shooter Text says Indy Stanford would have a hell of a travel budget, and if the P4 moved to 10 conference games, it might really be hard for Stanford to schedule quality games. That was the argument against all of the different Pac-12 schools possibly going independent. Washington, Oregon, they all looked into it. And believe me, BYU really struggled to get schedules put together. It was a nightmare. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, except for Stanford, maybe. Let's see here. Doc Gibbs is here. Nice to see you, Doc. Key is what? What's up, Doc? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, what's up, Doc?
Key is what type of internal pressure is being applied to UNC, North Carolina State, to flip their vote to yes. It's a statement, but what do you think it would take to have those two shift their votes?
The Big Ten and the SEC saying, no, we're not going to take you.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that the only reason?
I mean, otherwise, you'd have to pay them a whole lot of money to make it worth their while to not go to the Big Ten or the SEC.
Right.
Does anybody see that happening?
Which part? Sorry. Like, did you see what
Any
happened?
of it? Did anything happening to flip their votes?
No.
Yeah, okay. Mo, when you were going to say something?
Guys, I kind of think about this from these four schools, like the Big Four in the ACC, UNC, Florida State. It's really, they're thinking in the long term, right? They're making long-term decisions, and Cal and Stanford is such a short-term decision for them. It just doesn't make much sense at all. So I don't know how they can flip votes and stuff, because it's just a short-term gain for some of the schools, but like long-term, it makes no sense. I just don't see it making much sense at all. So I don't know what can flip those votes.
Yeah, those four schools, you're never going to flip their votes because those four schools know they are assured a spot in the SEC or the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They know it. North Carolina is the most desirable state for both the SEC and the Big Ten. So those schools you're probably going to end up splitting that state. SEC is going to get one and Big Ten's probably going to get one. So you're not flipping them. You're not going to say UNC stay in this conference when you can go to the Big Ten, have all those research dollars in the Big Ten, all that $100 million a year payout to stick in the ACC and add Stanford and Cal and make an extra $2 million a year.
People might be surprised. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say people might be surprised, but I think North Carolina State is actually, from the SEC perspective, the more desirable brand. And I've watched both games on TV, NC State crowds are more lively.
Sure.
The stadium's actually full. NC, we think of them as basketball and this major brand, but I think that NC State in the SEC has a much higher ceiling. So, yeah, I think that both of them have spots.
Yeah, that's one school. NC State is a school that I'm not sure has a spot in the P2. I mean, North Carolina is a no-brainer, but NC State is real borderline. Unless they need some information that feel pretty comfortable.
You got to realize that the SEC and the Big Ten both want schools in North Carolina. The two biggest schools in North Carolina are UNC and NC State. They're also the only two public universities in North Carolina.
In the FBS.
So both of them are going to have to end up in the Power 2 in order for there not to be a conflict with the state legislature.
Wouldn't you want Duke, though, if you're the Big Ten over NC State?
No.
You would think so, and there's a lot of people who would agree with you on that. I would say no. NC State, in research-wise, I think them and VT were the top two research universities that were not selected by the AAU. There were almost
a research powerhouse.
You had that numbers, and they are. But I'm just saying, NC State's no slouch, and NC State brings a lot more for football. If you've ever seen Duke, not a great game day atmosphere. Small school doesn't bring a whole lot, and NC State has by some people's reports, has more power within the state legislature there than UNC does. So might not have anything happening without them getting a spot.
Let's go to this super chat that we got from Cougar Tracks. Thanks a lot, Cougar Tracks, for the super chat. Does anyone know with the new Big 12 contract if BYU will be able to rebroadcast their games? No, they can't do that anymore. No, they gave up those rights. They're tier 1 and tier 2. I think even tier 3 all now are owned by the Big 12. So they lost that. It sucks because they're going to be doing the production. There's going to be all BYU production teams. So the broadcasts are going to be fantastically produced, but yeah, the rights are all wholly owned by the Big 12. Good question though. Thanks a lot, Cougar Tracks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the super chat.
Let's see here. We've got really, really, really good questions today.
A lively bunch.
I saw another
Yeah.
one from Shooter in there. I was going to answer in chat, but if you could find it, I thought.
Which one is it? Just tell me what it starts with.
I'm going to find it. I'm sorry. It's up a little ways here. Who in the ACC does not have a P4 landing spot? And then he names some schools.
Let's see. Who in the nation?
That's a great discussion, guys.
And he named some that we think are shoo-ins. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting question. It's up a little ways.
Oh, here it is right here. I found it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think that Louisville is a shoo-in for the Big 12. That's I don't even put that one on the list. I think that they're even part of some of the Magnificent Seven +1 talks that we heard about. Syracuse, borderline, possible. Wake and BC, maybe a Georgia Tech. I mean, if you guys in the Big 12 want Georgia Tech, I think that would be a spot that either Syracuse or Georgia Tech gets. So I'd put Georgia Tech on that list. Duke, surprisingly as it is, I don't know if they want to leave or if they want to try and build up something there with Stanford and create kind of a different thing with the ACC. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of thought process.
Georgia Tech's an interesting one because you think that they would be a shoo-in, but they're really not. I mean, if you look at like the
great location
in Atlanta right there, and like you're for the Big 12, you know, it's
perfect.
The UCF, right? Like and travel partner. So maybe that makes sense, but it's not a guarantee. I mean, they really haven't produced a lot of athletic revenues. Georgia Tech is way low on those lists and everything. They're having trouble selling out their games. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of fan support at Georgia Tech. So not as obvious as you necessarily think. So I would put them at risk. BC and Wake, I think that they're in really big trouble. And then Syracuse too. It just depends if the Big 12 wants them. I think that Pitt's a no-brainer for the Big 12. Fit for the Big 12 and Louisville as well. So, yeah, I think the ones that are going to get left out are BC and Wake for sure, and maybe Georgia Tech and Duke also is that borderline.
Moen?
Yeah, I agree. Louisville's a shoo-in for the Big 12. I know some people have them as a dark horse SEC candidate to pair up with Kentucky. Syracuse, I like for the Big 12, especially if you're going towards basketball. Get into that Northeast corridor, pair them up with UConn. I think that works for the Big 12. Wake Forest is going to be the biggest loser here. Boston College. Duke could get into the Big 12, but Duke might, Immaculate's right, Duke might choose to go elsewhere and just, say, no, we'll do our own thing here and reform something with BC and Wake Forest and maybe pick up a USF and merge with some Big East teams or do something like that. Tulane. So
privates.
Yeah, I think most everybody outside of those schools has a shot.
I think Georgia Tech, if it pops, they would take Georgia Tech before they'd take Washington State. So if it disappears, that would be the way that I would think that they would get in. It'd be Oregon State would come in from the West, and you'd bring in Georgia Tech instead of bringing in Washington State. It would be a sort of a trade. And all the other schools you guys talked about, the only one I'm not sure about is Syracuse. I realize the basketball part that Moen has mentioned before. I just don't know if it's enough since this is obviously being driven by football. So we'll have to see.
Well, and their football team has improved throughout the last few seasons too. So I think they even have an upset or they came real close to upsetting Clemson one year when Clemson was undefeated.
Right.
So, I mean, Syracuse does have a decent football program now. It's not back to Donovan McNabb days, but it's, it's a decent program. They've got a nice stadium up there too.
And if you notice with them, when they were doing well.
Sorry, Immaculate, I want to get in here. Cougar Tracks. Cougar Tracks in the house. In here, man. Really appreciate you joining. It's wonderful to have you. You've been part of the communities from the very beginning, and I really appreciate your loyalty. So thank you for signing up to be a member. That's really cool.
Man, a lot of these BYU fans are joining the community. Come on, Utes. Ute folks.
There you go. Get on it. All right. Go ahead, Immaculate. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I'll finish that up real quick. When Syracuse was doing good in football here, under Dino Babbers, if you notice, ESPN was just all over it. And ESPN is full of Syracuse grads. So having
Right.
them in your conference isn't a bad thing. If they do well, you're getting a lot of looks from ESPN.
Very fair.
The one
Let's
I'm curious
go
case,
ahead, dude.
guys. This is the one that just confounds me is Virginia Tech. Where does Virginia Tech's going to be in the Big Three, the A3?
Yeah.
Where do they fit? Are they Big Ten doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily, but the SEC might be interested, and definitely the Big 12. To me, they're a really good fit for the Big 12. But yeah, if the SEC doesn't grab Virginia, they might have a chance to get in there too. But they're really going to be on the cusp of kind of making it into the Power 2, the A2. What do you guys think about that, the Virginia Tech?
I love them in the ACC. I like them grouped up with Tennessee, with Kentucky. If you take a North Carolina State out of North Carolina, I think that whole group really fits well. You know, if you take a Virginia and a North Carolina, of course, those are great schools that you want showing off. But how well do they group up with if you're going to have future divisions with Tennessee and Kentucky? I actually think Virginia Tech and North Carolina State group up really well with those, you know, kind of like a similar culture and style. And Virginia Tech, you have an automatic rivalry against Texas A&M if you could put that together. You know, you have a stadium full of cadets on both sides. I think it fits. I like it. I like it for the SEC. I think it's great for the Big 12 if the Big 12 can get it.
Yeah.
If they were in the Big 10, I wouldn't complain about it. I'd just be like, that's an interesting pick. I would have probably went Virginia first, but Virginia Tech's fine.
Moen?
Yeah, I think if you're getting, again, the whole AG within the state of Virginia saying they both have to be taken care of,
Right.
I think that might scare off both the Big 10 and the SEC from taking either of them. So they both might end up in the Big 12.
Wow.
Because I don't think the Big
interesting
10, Big 10 does not want Virginia Tech. And it's nothing against Virginia Tech, but if Big 10 takes anybody, it's UVA.
Yeah.
So in order for that to work, the SEC has to take Virginia Tech.
Can you
I don't
go
know that the SEC is...
Moan, like on why that would necessarily be? Like, why do those schools need to be split?
Well, no, the Attorney General for the state of Virginia has said that they both need to be taken care of.
Or else.
Or else they're going to bring legal issues against the conferences. So Virginia Tech and UVA both need to either end up in P2 or in the Big 12 to actually not. So, I mean, that's the situation. How far is the SEC going to expand? If it's expanding to 20, you know they're taking Florida State and Clemson. That's 18. They take North Carolina State. That's 19. Who's number 20? Do you make it a Virginia Tech to get into Virginia? If you do, the Big 10 probably feels comfortable enough taking UVA. If they don't, I don't think the Big 10 feels comfortable taking them both. So I could see both of them winding up in the Big 12.
What the heck's going to happen to Miami? Are they going to be Big 10 school?
Yeah, Miami would be a Big 10 school. Yeah. Miami and UNC are the two that I would guarantee as Big 10 schools.
Yeah. If the SEC gets Florida State, they don't care about Miami. They've already got Florida locked.
So if you're Miami, like you can't leave Miami on an island, though, just like with USC, right? Like who would you pair up with Miami for travel reasons if you're the Big 10?
North Carolina. Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State. Yeah. You would just make it.
Miami was in the Big East, so that's their history.
Yeah.
Just make them basically the coastal division of the Big 10.
Yeah.
Our Webb here with one of our members is leaving us with another message. He says Syracuse in upstate, that isn't in New York City, so not a slam dunk for Big 12. Louisville, on the other hand, prints money, so heck yes. Plus, restore rivalries with Cincy and West Virginia. That we do need to build up those rivalries from West Virginia and Cincinnati and UCF. So whatever we can on that side of the country, we need to do that.
Yeah, I'm with them.
It's great. But if you've ever been to New York City when Syracuse basketball is playing, every bar is playing Syracuse basketball. Graduates from Syracuse matriculate to New York City.
Matriculate.
Follow their team. So,
all right. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for me. So unless you guys want to keep going without me, I think we got to pop for tonight.
Let's wind it down for.
So, Moen, I'll give you just tell us what your last feelings are as we leave here tonight. Where are we going to be tomorrow afternoon with the ACC? I don't even care what school, just with the ACC in general.
We're going to be the same spot we're at right now. No changes.
Okay.
All talk, no action.
Yeah, that's what we've gotten for a while. What do you think, Immaculate?
I don't think we're going to get a vote, but I think we're going to be inundated with leaks of all different types from all different angles, because if that falls through, that means they need to get this thing pushing in one direction or another. So I don't think there's going to be a vote. Would love to see there be a vote and some finality, but I think that we're going to have a little bit more struggle, and hopefully then we will get a finality by the end of the week.
Very
No
good.
vote. Don't see a vote. I really hope that there's some movement in a possible merger for Oregon State and Wazoo, just so they can find a home and get some stability before the football season, guys. Oregon State's stacked this year. I want them to have a great season stuff. And with this looming over their head, I think it's too much of a distraction. I don't like that for them at all. I hope that there's some type of merger that happens within the next week. And hopefully Cal's in that, and we'll see what Stanford does. But I'm hoping that we get resolution on that for Wazoo and Oregon State.
That would be great if we could get it. I just don't know if it's coming, unfortunately. You were going to say something else? You go ahead.
Yeah, just before the football season, before Oregon State Wazoo start playing football games, right?
Right.
I hope it's done, because that really is pretty heavy on the fans and players too. And recruiting, guys, recruiting. How the heck are you supposed to recruit for next year? Like, you got to figure this out. And so time is of the essence, and get it done. That's the best of all scenarios, is its merger. So root for you, Beavs and Cougs.
I think the Beavers know what they're going to do. I think they're just waiting for Stanford and Cal to leave. So
something's going to happen. I know that. I just don't think it's a vote tomorrow, and the ACC I don't think is going to happen. Sorry, SMU, but I don't think you can write a check, Charles, to get in there. Anyway, appreciate everybody being here. We've been over 130 people watching live. We really appreciate it on a Monday. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications for next time. I have a preview for tomorrow. We have a show with Notre Dame, the Four Horsemen podcast, and that's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So look forward to that. Appreciate if you guys want to come and participate in that. And then after that, we have another Big 12 Mafia show, which will be happening at 8 Eastern. So outside of that, if there's any other comments or statements you guys want to make, otherwise I think we're going to check out.
Florida fans, we're going to get you this time around. I'm sick of your smack talking, so be ready. Then Baylor, we're coming after you after that too. I'm getting a little fed up here, so we'll talk about that in upcoming episodes, but go Utes.
All right. Mo and Immaculate, we'll see you later. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you being
guys.
here. Everybody else,
Good talking to you.
have a great night, and peace out.